Good day, everyone. I am Charmaine Julaga Fantunalgo, a second year AB Psychology student, and I will be discussing the topics about children with disabilities under Chapter 3 Early, Middle, and Late Childhood. About
Children with disabilities. A child with a learning disability has difficulty in learning that involves understanding or using spoken or written language, and the difficulty can appear in listening, thinking, reading, writing, and spelling. A learning disability may also involve difficulty in doing mathematics. Their play skills may be limited by features or barriers related to their disabilities. Now, there are three types of learning disabilities: the dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. Dyslexia. Dyslexia is an impaired reading disability category reserved for individuals who have a severe impairment in their ability to read and spell. In some cases, it's possible to detect symptoms of dyslexia before a child starts school. Some symptoms of dyslexia involves delayed speech development compared with other children of the same age, problem expressing themselves using spoken language, such as being unable to remember the right word to use or putting sentences together incorrectly, difficulty with or little interest in learning letters of the alphabet, problems learning the names and sounds of letters, spelling that's unpredictable and inconsistent, putting letters and figures the wrong way around, such as writing 6 instead of 9 or B instead of D, confusing the order of letters in words, reading slowly or making errors when reading aloud. According to research, the causes of dyslexia tends to run in families. It appears to be linked to a certain genes that affect how the brain processes reading and language, as well as risk factors in the environment. Though there's no cure for dyslexia, early assessment and intervention result in the best outcome. Sometimes dyslexia goes undiagnosed for years and isn't recognized until adulthood. Best Next is dysgraphia. It is a learning disability that involves difficulty in handwriting. Children with dysgraphia may write very slowly. Their writing products may be virtually illegible, and they may make numerous spelling errors because of their inability to match sounds and letters. One of the main signs of dysgraphia is messy handwriting. There are some of the key handwriting skills kids may struggle with dysgraphia: forming letters, spacing letters correctly on the page, writing in a straight line, making letters the correct size, holding and controlling a pencil or other writing tool, putting the right amount of pressure on the paper with the writing tool, and maintaining the right arm position and posture for writing. Initially, children with impaired handwriting benefit from activities that support learning to form letters: playing with clay to strengthen hand muscles, keeping lines within mazes to develop motor control, and connecting dots or dashes to create complete letter forms. Dysgraphia is a specific learning disability that can be diagnosed and treated. Children with dysgraphia usually have other problems such as difficulty with written expression. It is important that a thorough assessment of handwriting and related skills areas be carried out. Now, we have dyscalculia. It is also known as developmental arithmetic disorder. It is a learning disability that involves difficulty in math computation. People with dyscalculia have trouble with math at many levels. They often struggle with key concepts like bigger versus smaller, and they can have a hard time doing basic math problems in more abstract math. Some symptoms, including dyscalculia, is counting backwards and forwards, counting two amounts, trouble recalling basic math facts like multiplication tables, difficulty linking numbers and symbols to amounts, trouble with mental math and problem solving, and difficulty making sense of money and estimating quantities. Like other learning disabilities, dyscalculia has no cure and cannot be treated with medication. By the time most individuals are diagnosed, they have a shaky mouth foundation. The goals of treatment, therefore, are to fill in as many gaps as possible and to develop coping mechanisms that can be used throughout life. This is typically done through special instruction, accommodations, and other interventions. If you are familiar with the movie Percy Jackson in the Olympians The Lightning Thief, in the debut movie, Percy is a 17-year-old high school boy with ADHD and dyslexia struggling with school and getting into lots of trouble. Unbeknownst to him, he is also the son of Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea. For example, Percy can go underwater in a pool and hyperfocus for 7 minutes without having to come up for air. But when he has to pay attention to his teacher in class, he is distracted. ADHD is a disability on which children consistently show one or more of the following characteristics over a period of time: inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. Children who are inattentive have such difficulty focusing on any one thing that they may get bored with a task after only a few minutes or even seconds. ADHD runs in families. Anywhere from one-third to one-half of parents with ADHD will have a child with the disorder. There are genetic characteristics that seem to be passed down. If a parent has ADHD, a child has more than a 50% chance of having it. If an older sibling has it, a child has more than a 30% chance of having it. Boys are more likely to be diagnosed than girls to receive an ADHD diagnosis. This may be because boys tend to exhibit hallmark symptoms of hyperactivity. Although some girls with ADHD may have the classic symptoms of hyperactivity, many don't. In many cases, girls with ADHD may daydream frequently and be hypertalkative rather than hyperactive. The treatment for ADHD typically includes behavioral therapies, medication, or both. Medication can also be very helpful when you're living with ADHD. ADHD medications are designed to affect brain chemicals in a way that enables you to better control your impulses and actions. Emotional and behavioral disorders. Emotional and behavioral disorders consist of serious, persistent problems that involve relationships, aggression, depression, and fears associated with personal or school matters, as well as other inappropriate social emotional characteristics. Mental health problems in children and adolescents include several types of emotional and behavioral disorders, including disruptive, depression, anxiety, and pervasive development autism disorders, characterized as either internalizing or externalizing problems. Symptoms of an emotional behavioral disorder include inappropriate actions or emotions under normal circumstances, learning difficulties that are not caused by another health factor, difficulty with interpersonal relationships, including relationships with teachers and peers, a general feeling of unhappiness or depression, feeling of fears, and anxiety related to personal or school matters. Autism spectrum disorders is also called pervasive developmental disorders. Autism spectrum disorders are characterized by problems in social interaction, problems in verbal and nonverbal communication, and repetitive behaviors. Autism spectrum disorder or ASD is a problem that affects a child's nervous system and growth and development. Symptoms often shows up during a child's first 3 years of life. Some children with ASD seem to live in their own world. They are not interested in other children and lack social awareness. A child with ASD focuses on following a routine that may include normal behaviors. A child with the disorder also often has problems communicating with others. He or she may not start speaking as soon as other children. He or she may not want to make eye contact with other people. It may be caused by certain genes. A child with ASD may also have problems with their brain structure or with certain chemicals in the brain. Researchers do know that ASD is not caused by what a parent does to raise a child. Much less often, other things that may cause ASD include being exposed to toxins in the environment before or after birth, severe infections such as meningitis or encephalitis that result in brain damage, problems during delivery, and infections before birth. Or ASD, it has autistic disorder. It is a severe autism spectrum disorder that has its onset on the first 3 years of life. It includes deficiencies in social relationships, abnormalities in communication, and restricted, repetitive, and stereotype patterns of behavior. Asperger's syndrome, still under ASD, is a relatively mild autism spectrum disorder in which the child has relatively good verbal language skills, milder nonverbal language problems, and a restricted range of interests and relationship. The symptoms when you meet someone who has Asperger's syndrome, you might notice two things right off. He's just as smart as other folks, but he has more trouble with social skills. He also tends to have an obsessive focus on one topic or perform the same behaviors again and again. The condition is what doctors call a high functioning type of ASD. This means that the symptoms are less severe than other kinds of autism spectrum disorders. He may miss social clues or cues that are obvious to other folks, like body language or the expressions on people's faces. For instance, he may not realize that when somebody crosses his arms and scolds, he's angry. Another sign is that your child may show few emotions. He may not smile when he's happy or laugh at a joke, or he may speak in a flat, robotic kind of way. For a trivia, did you know that Isaac Newton had Asperger's syndrome or something else on the spectrum? The researchers from Cambridge University who also argued that Albert Einstein was autistic mentioned in their article evidence that Newton isolated himself as much as possible and was notoriously awkward when it came to typical daily conversation. He was not good at keeping friends and relied strongly upon routines. Lastly, there are a number of reports that suggest that he was often so focused on his work that he went for days at a time without eating or sleeping.
The vulnerability of children with disabilities is magnified because of their increased need for dependence on the caregivers. Disabled children are often more isolated from peers and they lack contact outside home. Anyways, I hope you weren't bored watching. Um, I guess that's all for today. Thank you for listening. Bye!